When the funeral director slid the invoice across the desk, I signed it without asking anyone for help, not because I could easily afford it, but because I already knew no one else would. My mother had passed away 3 days earlier, and during those 72 hours, my 2 brothers and sister had managed exactly one thing between them: sending excuses. Aaron texted that he was tied up with work. Melissa promised she would see what she could do. Ryan never answered at all. I stared at the receipt for the funeral expenses and folded it into my purse. The woman behind the counter offered a sympathetic smile before asking the question people always asked: "Will the family be sharing the cost?" "It's only me," I replied. She nodded as though she'd heard those words many times before. What I didn't know then was that my mother had anticipated this exact moment months before she died. My name is Claire Morgan, and for nearly 2 years my evenings followed the same routine. After leaving the accounting office downtown, I drove 15 minutes to my mother's Evelyn's cottage on Cedar Hill Road. Some nights I brought soup. Some nights I cooked in her kitchen. On weekends I cleaned the house, organized medications, paid utility bills, and sat beside her while she complained that old movies were better than anything on television. She never demanded those visits. She simply smiled every time I walked through the door. The doctors had diagnosed advanced lung disease, and every staircase left her breathless. An oxygen machine hummed beside her favorite chair, filling the house with its steady, mechanical rhythm. "You don't have to come every day," she would tell me. I know. Yet every day I came anyway. My siblings lived busy lives several states away. Aaron spoke confidently about promotions and investments, but always had a reason he couldn't travel. Melissa filled social media with cheerful family photographs while ignoring most of my mother's phone calls. Ryan drifted from job to job, borrowing money whenever life became inconvenient and promising repayment that never arrived. Whenever Mom defended them, she always used the same sentence: "They mean well." I stopped arguing long before she stopped believing. One autumn afternoon, she drove me to an appointment with her longtime attorney. She insisted on meeting him alone. When she returned to the car 40 minutes later, she tucked a sealed envelope into her handbag and suggested lunch as though nothing unusual had happened. I never asked about the visit. Looking back, that silence changed everything. As winter settled in, her health declined rapidly. Hospital visits became frequent, prescription costs climbed, the oxygen supplier demanded deposits insurance refused to cover. I quietly paid whatever needed paying. Occasionally, I informed my siblings. Aaron answered with practical questions about paperwork. Melissa replied with heart emojis. Ryan rarely replied at all. The pattern repeated so often that I stopped expecting anything different. Then came the Tuesday morning call. A neighbor who checked on Mom before sunrise found her peacefully asleep in bed. She never woke up. By noon, I had contacted everyone. Aaron's first question was whether she had left life insurance. Melissa wanted to know when services would be scheduled because flights were expensive. Ryan read my message 6 hours later and remained silent. Not one person asked whether I was okay. The next day, I met with attorney Daniel Rhodes to begin probate. After expressing condolences, he unlocked a cabinet and removed a thick folder labeled with my mother's name. "There's something unusual you should know," he said. Inside was a carefully prepared estate plan, unlike any I imagined. My mother's modest home, savings, and investments together represented the largest financial asset she had accumulated during 40 years of careful living. But distribution depended on a condition she personally insisted upon. Every child had been invited to demonstrate love, not with speeches, but with presence. Attendance at her funeral and meaningful participation in burial expenses would determine inheritance eligibility. Daniel explained that she had rewritten the documents nearly a year before her death, while healthy and mentally sharp. She wanted actions to matter more than promises. I sat speechless. Finally, I asked, "Should I tell them?" He considered the question. "That decision belongs to you." I sent a group message that evening. I explained only that medical expenses had been significant and funeral costs remained outstanding. I invited everyone to attend and asked whether they could contribute. The replies arrived quickly. Aaron wrote, "Not our problem if there's nothing left." Melissa apologized and claimed airfare would be wasteful under the circumstances. Ryan never responded. For several minutes, I simply stared at the screen. Then I locked my phone and continued planning my mother's farewell alone. The chapel held 60 chairs. On the morning of the service, barely a dozen were occupied. Former coworkers, neighbors, church friends, and one elderly teacher who remembered my mother from decades earlier quietly filled the front rows. 3 seats reserved for my siblings remained empty. The silence felt louder than any sermon. Before delivering his remarks, the minister unfolded a handwritten note my mother had left with her legal papers. He read only one sentence. "If kindness is measured by who arrives when nothing can be gained, then I already know which of my children truly loved me." No one moved. No one needed to. Every empty chair answered for itself. 2 weeks later, certified probate notices reached my siblings. For the first time in months, my phone would not stop ringing. Suddenly, everyone wanted explanations. Everyone wanted meetings. Everyone wanted fairness. The same people who could not spare a Saturday for their mother's funeral somehow found time to hire attorneys, book flights, and demand answers. And they were all headed toward the same room, where the probate referee would soon read Evelyn Morgan's final instructions aloud, a document written long before anyone imagined money would become the loudest voice in the family.